Hey, Barca, I've been having flashbacks from the war.
Boggs, which one would that be?
The 2005 NCAA Archery Championships. I was the last man standing, with a mascot's head still twitching in my hands.
Oh, God. We got to get you out of Dodge, man.
I'm seriously considering taking a mental health vacation from my problems.
Classic crisis strategy, Boggsy. That'll get rid of the story for sure.
There will be no further comment at this time.
Anyway, the show must go on. In today's episode, we're breaking down the Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson saga through the eyes of a comms guy who's clearly seen way too much.
Then we hit the therapy couch and get a little too honest about working in sports. Regrets, burnout, life after podcasting, all the greatest hits from your favorite underpaid pros.
And we close with a rant nobody asked for, when not to ask for a raise.
Spoiler, you still won't get one, Barca. But hey, go ahead and CC the top dog anyway.
Episode 3, here we go.
Andale! This is the true story of two washed-up sports guys who chased the dream. Private flights, championship rings, running sideline to sideline on per diem and adrenaline.
We gave our 20s and 30s to the industry, pulled off miracles that were never in the job description. In return, low pay, long hours, and we still got cut from the team.
This is about what really happens behind the badge. The burnout, the bad bosses, the dream job that didn't love you back. But also, the lifelong friendships, the chaos, the holy shit stories you couldn't make up. And somehow, despite everything, you'd still do parts of it all over again.
This is for the ones who lived it, loved it, hated it, and still kind of miss it. For everyone who's ever asked, how in the hell did we survive that? We are two former sports insiders with more than 40 years of experience and more than enough scars to make fun of it all.
And just enough trauma to start a podcast instead of going to therapy.
I'm Brandon Barca.
And I'm Andy Boggs.
And this is No Longer Credentialed. We once had access, now we have opinions. And we are back for another show after corporate renewed NLC for reasons still under investigation.
And we want to thank everyone for their support and feedback from the first two episodes. Clearly, you all have incredible memories and some scars that might never heal. So today we're giving you a behind-the-curtain look at why we started this podcast in the first place.
But before we unpack some of our emotional baggage, we got to tackle this trending headline from Chapel Hill. It gets juicier by the day, but through the eyes of the people who actually worked in sports.
This Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson saga has everything. Half-century age gaps, burner accounts, off-camera interruptions, university-issued PR statements, a rogue beauty queen moonlighting as a publicist. This story has it all.
Thank you, Stefan. Let's jump into this wild timeline and stop me if you start twitching like that mascot's head in your hands earlier. Bill Belichick, 73 years old, is dating 24-year-old Jordan Hudson, a former cheerleader now apparently running point on his entire public image. Things blew up after a CBS Sunday morning interview promoting his new book. He was asked how they met, and Hudson, from off camera, shut it down. The internet lost its mind. Belichick responded with a statement via UNC's University Comms office, claiming CBS had agreed to keep the interview focused on football. Well, CBS clapped back. No preconditions, no limits on the interview. Then the story didn't end. Pablo Torre drops a bombshell with his sources claiming Hudson had been banned from UNC's football facility. Of course, UNC denies it, issuing a carefully crafted PR statement saying Jordan will continue to manage all activities related to Belichick's personal brand outside of the responsibilities for Carolina football and the university. Notice they didn't deny the separation of Jordan from the football team and the university in the statement. What can I say? This is a full-blown code red PR nightmare. Everybody take cover. And this all happened just because someone asked, how do you two meet? Oh, and let's not forget, Belichick was hired at UNC in December. He's making $10 million this year, double what Mac Brown made last year. So Boggsy, I have a lot of questions for you on this topic. As someone who's been bunkered down in comms crisis mode since you were moonwalking in your Huggies, what do you make of all this? You know, who has the juice? Who's going to tell them what to do? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think the first thing we need to keep in mind is that this is a college campus and not a professional football team. And sometimes there are people on the campus that don't like sports. And on most occasions, especially at a place like Chapel Hill, there are probably some people there that want this whole deal to fail. Um, just to kind of rewind back to the CBS Sunday morning show, Barca, do you watch that show?
I do.
It's an incredible show. It's so good. It's like
Amazing.
my wife and I would, before we had, our son, we would, on a Sunday morning have coffee. I actually had a physical paper, and I would read the paper and drink coffee, copious amounts of coffee, and watch that show and just feel really good about myself. And for the rest of the day, I was like, I'm set, right? And so this was supposed to be a puff piece, and it just turned into this just huge deal. And there were probably donors tuning in to watch that, thinking, this is something that I really want to watch. I'm eager to see what he's going to say, representing our school and, the football program. And then it just all went off the rails. And then you also have to think about, Barca, and we talked about this earlier, that there's trying times on a college campus, like right now, like funding's being cut. There's governmental pressures on free speech. I mean, rightly or wrongly, that's just the way it is right now. And I did some research, and the UNC football budget has grown by 50% if you
Wow.
include NIL money, from $40 million to $61 million this year. And they've even deferred money from other parts of campus to athletics for NIL. 15 million is what I saw. And they're also still paying Mac Brown 5 million to not coach. Belichick's staff has ballooned, and oh yeah, he's being advised and counseled incorrectly, I may add, by his 24-year-old girlfriend on almost everything. And Barca, you know this, when you're in athletics, in college athletics, you have to cater to the other people on campus. We would honor professors at media timeouts, giving them a ball, put their name and lights on a video board. We would have staff and faculty days at practices where people across campus would come over, watch practice, talk to everybody. It's just more than coaching football. And unfortunately, Belichick is learning that the hard way. I just want to get your take on that. I mean, that's my first initial thoughts, is that this is just not professional football anymore. There's just so many other interests on that campus.
Yeah, I think additionally, this isn't a, Florida State or Tennessee type school. This is a world-class institution in Chapel Hill. Some of the faculty think the Super Bowl is a peer-reviewed journal, right? I think the first red flag that went off to me is when the university comms got involved in the situation. We've been part of those situations in the past. And when that happens and they release a statement on behalf of Belichick, then it's a whole new ballgame. This isn't the NFL. Those are the top dogs on campus. Then you start to question, how much heat is the university side of things going to take? And,
Right.
What happens to the internal trust behind the scenes, and where does it go from there? And then on top of it, then you're going to have the clashing with the powerful head coach behind the scenes, because they're going to want to do it their way. So, give us a little bit of your background on what you thought of that situation.
Well, I just think it all comes down to who has the juice. Who has the juice on campus to talk to Belichick and actually get through to him and counsel him. Will he accept counseling? Is his hubris is it just too off the charts that he thinks he knows what he's doing and you're just talking into the wind? It's nice to have sometimes university on your side, because it's just more people to talk to. And I think the people inside of Carolina's athletic department, their comps people, are first-rate people. I mean, they've been through some wars. I mean, they've had the academic scandal a few years ago. That was more of a university thing, but it really impacted athletics too. And so for them to kind of be left out of all this, and I'm not saying they're being left out, but they just hired somebody else to come in and help. So it kind of gives me the sense that those guys have no juice, and they need to have juice because they can counsel him on kind of best practices and how to work in college and how the media works in Chapel Hill and all that, I just don't know if any of that stuff is happening. And also, too, a few years ago during that academic scandal, I mean, UNC they went all in. I mean, they hired a PR firm. They paid him over 200 grand a month for 7 months to deal with that and to help counsel their university presidents and athletic department and all that stuff. And honestly, I'd advise them to call him again, even if it's for a month, just to how do we get our bearings here? Let's get our bearings. Let's change some of the narrative, and let's just grab the narrative back. I think that's the big thing, Barca, is that they kind of let this thing get out of control, and when they have the juice to kind of shape it the way they want to shape it.
So obviously, this issue is way above either of our heads in the department at this point. If you're at
Right.
UNC, right, it's going to the top people at the university, potentially, like you said, bringing in an outside crisis comms firm. You mentioned, stopping the bleeding and flipping the narrative back to football.
Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts on that? Do you have anything, that from your own experience that you've gone through?
Well, there's just so many things you can do. I mean, I think he needs to get it back to football. I mean, they brought him there to coach football, not to go to beauty pageants and, being told on national television what to say, in television interviews. I mean, he came there to coach football. And so that needs to be the shift in the PR strategy. It just needs to get back to having football talks. How much.
And that's what he wants to do. That's what he's always wanted to do.
It's always what he's wanted to do. And whether that's having a press conference or whether that's having someone in bed with them for a couple of days, where that's a Pat 40 or a local writer or somebody like that, just to have them come in and, hey, this is how much it's changed. This is what we're dealing with. What's the difference between coaching the Patriots and coaching Carolina? And, there's just all kinds of ways that they could shape the narrative. It's just, is he going to do it? I just don't know if he, has the personality or the want to do it. I mean, it's just a difficult situation when you have a coach that just doesn't want to do any of that stuff. Maybe he will. I don't know. Maybe he will.
To think that all of this has been stirred up now for weeks, all based on how did you two meet?
Right.
And
such a silly thing.
Yeah. And it could have gone away pretty quickly. Right.
Right.
And Belichick could have just done his typical non-answers, which he's done in press conference with the Patriots, and been done with it. And we're not talking about it anymore.
I think CBS Sunday Morning and these national news outlets, I mean, they'll go with the flow with you until you show up their show. And then when you show up their show, then the gloves come off. And that's kind of what happened here. And they responded. I mean, they have to protect their brand, like their brand of being the best show on TV, I think. I mean, do you get that feeling? They had to do what they did.
To me, the interesting thing is the other layers within this of the Pablo Torre said that in his journalistic investigation, he's claiming that they have dirt on this from the highest levels from within the football program.
Right.
I mean, that's his program.
Right.
So that's where some more flags come off. Was like, what is really going on behind the scenes? And maybe this was just the one thing for it to trigger everything. And it did, because the university has basically removed themselves, basically saying that she's not an employee. She doesn't represent the football program or the university. And to Belichick, for his part of it, that's got to make him fuming mad that's out there publicly. So where does it go from here?
Wow, I think he's probably just, like you said, going to bunker down and try to weather the storm. I'm glad he's got some more help in there. Again, there's some really good people working in the Carolina Athletic Communications office, and there's probably been a lot of lost sleep in the beds around Chapel Hill over this thing.
When your hands start getting tied by the university, is what it appears to be happening. It's just not fun of all to be in that situation from a PR standpoint with an athletic department, because you're shy on everything, right? So
right. Well, it just makes you feel bad too. I mean, hey, here I am working hours and hours and hours with this football program, at practices and talking to local media. I'm having to fend off the media that I know. I'm getting calls and texts. I mean, I'm the front line, right? It's not the university comms guy. They're not getting calls from Pat 40 and, all these other college, ESPN and all. Like, I'm getting those. They're not getting them. And so I hope there's an open line of communication there, but I wouldn't hold my breath.
Well,
I would turn
we will
Carolina
see how
blue.
it goes. We will see how it goes in the coming weeks. And if anybody needs crisis comms help, Boggsy is your man.
No, that's not the case. But there are people out there that they can counsel. And Barca, I hate it. You just want to, like you said before, being a social media manager, when you're a comms person right now, you just want to crawl under a rock and like, get me to July.
Tell me, dig a little deeper into that right there, because we've both been in those situations. I've had situations where things have gotten reported in national news on, on the teams that we're helping to promote. Go through that from the emotional standpoint of it all. It's very, at least for me, it's
just all encompassing, right? I mean, it's like you don't think about anything else during that time. I mean, everything else kind of just falls to the wayside. Even like eating, you may not want to eat. You may not want to get up out of bed. You have to. It's just that when you encounter a crisis like that, it's just all encompassing. A dude better win. He better win. If he does not win, if he goes 7-5, that's not gonna be good.
And selfishly, Boggs, I don't know if this is recording.
Yeah, it's recording.
As social media people, we love the engagement of these types of things.
Yeah, I bet you do.
We love the engagement. The numbers, they're going up like the stock market through the roof. So while you're going through misery, I'm sitting back this time in Maui. I'm having a drink and I'm like, man, look at these record numbers right now.
But if you look at it from a strictly PR point of view, if you ran a Cision report between April of 2025 and April of 2024, whoa, can you imagine what those numbers would look like? I mean, probably 10 times, more than 10 times. I don't even, even 100 times of the hits you're getting now.
Just the spike from the hire in his name being associated with the program, and now this.
Right.
It's some people's resumes are going to look good. That's for sure.
Well, and also too, Barca, think about, let's say he goes 12-0 this year. That just makes it even more attractive. They make it, it's a more attractive product for ESPN, for everybody.
The narrative's there for them now. The narrative is there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess you could spin it half full. It's like, okay, you have a lot of eyeballs on you now. You also have, quite arguably, one of the best football coaches that's ever lived. So can we go 12-0 despite all this and just crush our Cision numbers and our PR numbers and your social media numbers? I don't know.
It'll be an interesting case study for sure. If it's going well, how does the university react? How does everybody else react within that campus? And if it goes bad, it can go bad quick.
Yes, it can. Sponsored by. We couldn't do this show without our financial backers, a group so small you could count them on one hand with 10 fingers left over.
Today's episode is brought to you by the AM Ambush, the official sponsor of Why Did I Even Go Home After a Late Night Game? Because nothing says we value your time like an 8:30 a.m. meeting scheduled by someone who slept like a baby while you were uploading photo galleries at 2 a.m. The AM Ambush, proudly fueling sleep deprivation and slowly crushing your will to live. At this point, does anybody even know what day it is?
We're also sponsored by Touched by a Supervisor. They left their fingerprints all over your water polo player of the week masterpiece just to change standout to shined. Because nothing screams little edits, big insecurities like micromanaging a post with 74 views. Touched by a Supervisor, because trusting your team is nice, but overriding their work, That's how you build culture. Andale.
I can't with that one, man. Back to
That's a
the
good
action.
one. That's a good one.
Unbelievable.
Alrighty, now we're on to the main segment of the show. I'm going to call this a very special episode of No Longer Credentialed. The Fresh Prince gets shot and Carlton buys a gun. Wait, those are the wrong notes. Sorry.
I got this. After hearing from so many of you, we wanted to pull the curtain back and talk a little about why we're doing this podcast. Some of what we're about to get into is personal. It stirred up a lot for both of us when we started unpacking it. Our feelings about the industry, complicated. But then again, so is life.
We're going to do our best to talk through it honestly and give you a real sense of what it feels like, what it really feels like when the access goes away.
And there's a point to all of this. It's this. A, working in sports is hard. B, you're not crazy for feeling it. And C, if you're listening, you're worth more than the laptop.
The format's simple for this segment. We're going to ask each other anything about the business. Nothing is off the table. No prep, just honest questions and answers. Everyone in sports has their own story. These are just ours.
But even if one part of this helps someone out there feel seen, then maybe this little pod actually serves a purpose.
I'm going to start with the first question here.
Yeah.
Let's start with something simple. Boggsy, I don't know, maybe it's not that simple.
Yeah.
Today,
Yeah.
how are you doing? And I don't want the canned answer.
Yeah.
I want to know how you're really doing.
Yeah. I think I'm doing okay. I mean, it's I've got a, little life here that's good. It's very concentrated on my family, and I work from home, and I have a lot of time to, go fishing and go to the pool and, play soccer with my son in the backyard, and I think everything's good. I mean, I think career-wise it'd be kind of nice to be doing something else, but this is kind of the season of life that I'm in, and we're just going to kind of roll with it and see what happens.
It's been a couple years since you've been in sports. What's that process been like? I mean, I'm sure you've gone through all 7 stages of emotions.
Yeah, I think, Barca, the big thing for me is that some days I look at this and wonder if I just wasted my time, like doing things in the business for the logo, for the university, for the sports team that, at the end of the day, just really didn't matter. I mean, I'm middle-aged, and so I've kind of gotten to this existential part of my life that I just want to do things that matter. And I think that what I did and all the time I spent away from home, away from my family, and, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours doing things for a brand, was that really worth it in the end? So I have to reconcile those feelings, not a ton, but every once in a while, I really do. It's just, and this is one thing I was going to ask you, and I'll just bring it up now. It's just that, I mean, I've got friends now that are starting to plan retirement, dude. Like, they are like 5 years away from retiring. I mean, I have friends in the military. They've retired, and they're doing other things. And so here I am, 49, and I'm just kind of like really kind of starting off all over again. But I think that's okay. And I actually heard from a buddy the other day that I'd not talked to in years, and he texted me. I went to grad school with him, and he was an athletic trainer, and he said he's graduating in December with a civil engineering degree. And I was like, dude, civil engineering, like, what's that about? He's like, I've always wanted to build roads and bridges. And so I decided just to go do it. And so that was kind of inspiring, like you can do anything you want. Hell, we're doing a podcast right now. Who would have thought we would have been doing this? And so just, I've just kind of got to the point in my life where I just want to do things that kind of matter to the people I care about and to me. So
Wasted is such a strong word.
right.
Is that how you really feel? Like your career
Yeah.
direction should have gone another way if you had to look back at everything?
Barca, I think the difference between, and we can talk about this, between you and I is that I'm perfectly happy not working in that space anymore. Like, it was fun. The stories are amazing, but I just think there's kind of more to life now than just burning yourself on both ends for who are you doing it for? You end up doing it for yourself, but at the end of the day, it's like that's to me. I just kind of felt like maybe that was a selfish move. I mean, I have conflicting feelings about it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, it's just one of those things that you know, if I'm 28, if I tried to do something else, would that have been a better move for me? I could have moved and moved up in the business and taken a job for not much more money than I was making and worked twice as much. Like I just kind of said to myself, I wasn't going to do that. And so I do feel like sometimes I wasted some time. Do you feel that way?
I think I definitely feel that way. I think it's more so from my personal life.
Right.
I had for years and years and years put my job as my number one priority
Right.
over family, over friends, personal
Right.
relationships, seeing my parents and relatives regularly. It's hard to really, for me personally, to look back on it now, knowing that I feel like I did a disservice to a lot of people in my life,
Right.
all to
But you,
pursue
yeah.
this passion.
Right. Right. And I think that's the thing. I mean, Barca, when you get out of school, like when I got out of grad school, like I moved to a place I knew nothing about for a bunch of ham sammies, honestly, for ham sandwiches. I mean, it was like little to zero money, but you did it because you had such
Crustables.
a passion for like being in the business. And I loved it. I met my wife in the first job and made long lasting friends and had a blast and went to a bunch of crazy cool places and met some people and I don't think I would have changed that. But then, as you get older, you're like, what am I doing? Did you ever think that?
For sure. Thought it many times. I think,
Right.
I even looked at it more from a like, it's an addiction
Mm-hmm.
um to do, at least for me, from my end, to do something that you love day in and day out.
Right.
And when you start taking a step back and realizing as you go higher up the chain, more of the politics in play
Right.
and how you start potentially losing your love for certain aspects of the job, how
Right.
you certain things turn you into the person that you never wanted to be. I'm very self-reflective on myself through a lot of the good and the bad, on
Right.
how I can get back to being the person that I feel like I am inside. And, there's a lot of, again, the seven stages of emotions, a lot of
Yeah.
anger and a lot of
Right.
disappointment and letting people down in my life. But again, that's what I love to do every day. I'm one of those people that,
Mm-hmm.
some people can go to a 9 to 5 and be like, you know what?
Right.
I don't care about the culture here. I don't care about who I'm working with. I'm getting my paycheck, doing my
Right.
work, I'm going home, and then that's when my day starts.
Right.
And for me, I look at it different. Like I just, when I'm around people, I want to enjoy it. And if I'm
Right.
around people for 12 to 15 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Right.
holidays, nights,
Yeah.
weekends, I want to be enjoying that time. I mean, I feel like
Right.
that's a huge chunk of my life.
Right.
And to see it all go from, being, this isn't fair to say, but I feel like there were times where I was at the top of the industry,
Right.
and to go crashing down to rock bottom
Mm-hmm.
in some cases, at least for me internally, was extremely hard
Mm-hmm.
to cope with. And, I'm always going to have a love for working in sports. Um, I think there'll come a time where, it'll be on the table again. And
Right.
I'll look at it and figure out what's the best situation. But there's also a lot of emotional baggage
Yeah.
that has taken a long time for me to reconcile, multiple therapists, to to figure out, where did it go wrong? Where did I let myself not become myself? And how can I repair those things, and how can I'm very now trying to make up for, certain relationships in my life,
Right.
and spending more time. My parents are getting older, and
Right.
I love that they've moved to Tennessee, and I'm
Right.
seeing them, and
Right.
all the time now. And rather than just like, hey, I'm gonna drive in on a Saturday morning and
Sure.
leave,
On Sunday.
Sunday at brunch. And
Yeah.
we've got bowl week coming up
Right.
on New Year's, and the team's leaving on the 24th
Right.
of December. And it's hard. It's been a full range of emotions. I
Yeah.
love the people that I worked with in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
As as I moved up the ladder, I found there are a lot more politics involved, and
Right.
a lot more things that I needed to be able to handle in a better way.
Yeah. I think for me, Barca, like, you have the stages of grief where you're like, holy smokes, dude. Like, I've been pretty good at life, so far. I mean, good at school and held a job for a certain amount of years and, all that stuff. And then it all, like, the rug gets pulled out from under you. And then you're like, well, holy smokes. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, why is this happening? Right. And you just have to kind of take reflection. I mean, I think there's two things. I think one, if you live long enough on this planet, you're going to have some things happen to you that aren't great. I mean, you're going to have, parents die and, people die around you, and you're going to have to learn how to get up from it, and I think for me, I'm not saying it was like a death, but, when you lose your job a couple times, it's like, well, what the hell's wrong with me, right? And so I think that part has been, so that's the grief part. The anger part, dude, the anger part is what gets me really stirred up. And this, is that just when you had that rant about loyalty, that is a big deal to me. And it's a big deal to everybody, who works 80 hours a week, like we are being loyal to that department or brand or sports team. But the people who pull the triggers, like that just doesn't matter to them. Like you said, we're just a number on a spreadsheet. And, at the end of the day, like I'm just want to be a human. Like I just want to be a good human. Just, treat me like a human. And people can't separate the human part from the work part. And I just don't understand that part. I just don't understand that. Right. And have you had those feelings where you're like, screw you, right? Like I gave my time to this place, and like not a word gets said to me about, hey, thanks for doing that or whatever. I mean, I don't need that, but it would have been nice, and it would have taken a 30-second phone call for that to happen. But a lot of times it just doesn't happen.
Boggs, I'm part Italian. Have you ever seen The Sopranos?
No.
Well, just think of a mob movie, mob ties, everything like that. Loyalty and trust is everything.
Right.
I'm someone that would always wear my emotions and passion on my sleeve. I cared about the work that I did. I wanted to stand up for what was best, for the department and then for the
Right.
overall organization. And so, I took a lot of things personally. I look sort of like you in a way. Our stories are different, but there did become a point to where I realized, like, why there's so many more bigger things in life. You've got
Mm-hmm.
a son now, and you see these other things, and at some point it hits you, and it hit me probably in the last 10 years that, like, I'm going to work hard, do my best job, but this job doesn't define me anymore.
Right.
This
Right.
job isn't my number one priority. There's a
Right.
much bigger world out there. And it was important to me in my 20s and early 30s because
Mm-hmm.
I had to grind, at least I felt I did, to move up the ladder. That's
Right.
just that's just part of it. I wanted to. I'm a high achiever, and
Right. Sure.
it was never about the title, and it was never about the pay. It was always about the work that I did and the people that I got to work with.
Right.
And you mentioned a little bit earlier the grief,
Yep.
and we both had these situations, and I'm curious, being let go a couple years ago,
Mm-hmm.
take me back to what that feels like. What put me back in that moment. The anger part for me, that's the hardest stage for me to get over.
Right.
But honestly, the most time that's spent is me self-analyzing myself and all the things I did wrong and could have done better. That's
Right.
that's where I spend the majority of my time. That's what I always go back to because I want to figure out, how can I not make that mistake again?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I was actually kind of excited about it because there was some, I mean, I was kind of getting to the point where I didn't want to do that anymore. And it was just kind of a turning point for me that, hey, all right, the big man upstairs is throwing this opportunity at you. Like, all right, it's time for you to go try to do something else. And I was actually kind of excited about it. I mean, I told people on the call, like, you're doing me a favor. And I still feel that way. I mean, I still feel that way to this day. I just think it's just like getting like knocked over the head multiple times, right? And that's the part that kind of hurt me a little bit, right? It's just that, like I do a good job, I do good work. People like being around me, and you know, can't get a sniff here, can't get a sniff there, that type of thing. And so yeah, when it first happened, I was perfectly cool with it, man. I'm cool with it. I'm still cool with it to this day. I'm not cool with how it went down, but I'm cool with the actual result, you know?
It
And
is. It's a relief in a way. It's a
yeah,
weird sensation. It's like a shocked feeling, like as we had coaches say before, a car that's going 100 miles per hour and slams on its brakes.
yeah,
And you process a lot of emotions, and one is, oh my gosh, that long list of never-ending list of things that I had to get done is now gone. I'm done.
right.
I'm done with
Yeah,
it. And
yeah,
that's the relief. But then on the other end, the other part of it sets in. And for me, it's the embarrassment,
right.
and that I let myself down or let my family down and friends, and dealing with, like, I'm someone that's a very private person in a
Right.
lot of the things in my life. And it's hard for me to then, like, I don't want to have conversations about, well, hey, you're no longer working here. And because I don't, I'm just, again, maybe it's part of the Italian side of me. I just don't like, or the PR side, I don't like to disclose a lot of information. I don't like to
Sure.
burden people with internally the struggle that I'm going through outside of like my therapists.
Right.
But, that moment happens, and it's, at first it's relief and then some anger. But the
Right.
longer it takes, and I'm curious on this, is, once it starts becoming a couple months and it's like, hey, we're a little bit older now. It's harder to
Yeah.
find certain jobs. And
Yeah.
eventually for me, it became like, okay, I could get myself up initially, but it got to a point to where I was like, I can't get myself up. And this is why I couldn't get myself up, because I didn't believe in myself.
Right.
I was broken, and I just wanted somebody else to believe in me and what I
Right.
could do, even through my biggest F ups or my biggest successes.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard to go through that process. And I mean, it's depressing, and
Yeah.
it's life altering, and it's not
Yeah.
meant to be the way we should be living day in and day out.
Yeah.
But I feel such an emotional letdown of just me as a person.
Right.
And that takes, like, I'll be honest, on some of these things, it's taken more than a year for me
Sure.
to really make myself feel good again, and to feel like, you know what, everybody has screw ups, or, you
Right.
know, that wasn't the right situation for me.
Right.
The red flags were already there. Why didn't I just pull the ripcord and get out?
Yeah. And I think for me, the way I kind of coped with it was just the way I talked earlier, was talking about like death and failure, and everybody experiences it, man. Everybody does. It's just, how do you get yourself up off the mat, right? Like how do you become better? How do you, I mean, cuz I just frankly, there's just a lot of people on this planet that have it a lot worse than I do. And it's just the truth, I mean, I have a roof over my head. I've got, I'm going to have food tonight for dinner. I got people that love me and want the best for me. And, I think at the end of the day, you just have to learn to cope with, like, this is just part of your journey, right? Like, I think, I learned in one of my jobs how to talk about story arcs, right? And, my story arc is a man in a hole. Like, where I started off great, I fell in a hole, but I sure as hell am going to dig myself out of this thing. Like, I'm not going to stay here and wallow in the hole. Like, there's more to what I have going on than just that hole. And that's been my philosophy. It's been a hard way to get to that philosophy and to that thought process, but that's my story arc, and I'm sticking with it, and that's just who I'm going to be. I'm going to have overcome. This is my story journey for my work career, and I'm going to come out of that hole.
Did you feel a sense of, working in this industry is so high profile? I mean, when we've talked about it before, when you're on the private team flights and you're going to the coolest stadiums in the world and staying in these amazing hotels and getting to see all the behind the scenes, all access things that are going on, and have personal relationships with athletes and coaches that, it- did you feel at all at any point that there was, an identity loss with this at all? And it's not to say that it's a cocky thing where it's like, yeah, I'm the biggest deal in the world, but there is a little bit, like all your friends and everybody, they want to know about your job. That's not the case with a lot of industries.
Yeah. I mean, there probably is a little bit of that. I mean, I still consider myself a sports guy. Like, I keep up with everything, and I love watching my former players and coaches do well in other places. I mean, it all kind of comes down to relationships for me. And, I don't, as far as like feeling like I'm not as important because I don't have that badge, I've never really felt that way. I just am not, I don't roll that way. I mean, I don't know. It never really entered my mind. I mean, maybe subconsciously it has, but for the most part, like I am who I am, and I like to have fun. And, that job was fun for that time, but it was just a season. And, people get brought into your life for a reason, and you are good to them and treat them well and have gratitude that you're around them. And, like my buddy says, some are roots, some are branches, and some are leaves. So you just have to kind of go like that. And, that job was just a branch of my life, and we'll just kind of move on. And, I want to get back to roots, man. Roots is what I'm looking for.
So you're saying you wouldn't go back to sports if
No,
something
I
came up?
wouldn't.
I'm just
I mean,
curious.
I wouldn't do it at the university professional team level. I don't think. I mean, if there was like some, you know, sports business that needed help or needed perspective, or we're doing some cool things technology wise, I would look into it. Um, on the TV side has always intrigued me about the stuff that they're doing on that. But those jobs are hard to come by. It's not like George Costanza says I could be an analyst for a game, right? Like Jerry's told him, like, no, normally those are former players. And not saying I'm George Costanza, but at the end of the day, like, there's people that have done TV for 30 years and they deserve those jobs. And so maybe it's something in that space, or I really don't know, man. I think at the end of the day, I really value being around my family and being home, and you're not commuting 2 hours a day. And do I want to do something in sports? Sure, but it would have to be the right thing. What
Yeah,
about you though? You'd go back in a heartbeat, right?
it'd have to be the right situation. But yeah, I love the grind. I love the day in and day out, and um, I definitely would have to be able to tell myself that it was the best situation for me to be in, and it was the kind of work that I want to do, and it had the right structure within the department
Right.
for me to help bring value, because I still feel like I do have a lot of things that where I can help the industry. And maybe that's just on the consulting side, or
Yeah.
things outside of teams, like you said, and or maybe it's just doing this podcast. Like,
Yeah.
I think both of us talked from the start. Is like, we're not doing this podcast to pump ourselves up, or
No.
to make money, or about ego. I think it's a fun passion project for us to
Hmm.
reminisce about the good and the bad, and the relationships we have in sports, and not necessarily, like, coming up with dirt on everything. It's more
Right.
just it's a brotherhood, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
something that we will always be bonded over in those
Yep.
trenches, and it gives us an outlet to, still reminisce about those things, catch up with old people like we saw in episode 2 with EJ,
Yeah. Yeah.
and tell stories, and hopefully, some people out there, younger people in the industry, and um, you know, if we can be any sort of light to help them out and
Yep.
with their process, or help get them ready for a career in sports, I think that's
Yeah.
great. But
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think if we could help one person get through their journey or help them with their, process, I mean, I think that's, I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but
I think part of it too, though, is well, then what's next? And I think that part, that unanswered question of, you know, being in a field for 2+ decades, and then being like, okay, I can't imagine on the athlete end, because their career
right,
spans are so much shorter, and
right.
they've been part of the process, I'm sure, like travel ball or whatever, since they were kids.
Yeah.
But from our end, it's a okay, great. That may or may not be the lifestyle anymore, but then what's next? And for me, that's the thing that,
Right.
the fulfillment of finding something else that I'm passionate about, that I want to do day in and day out. And you want to make feel like you're making a difference in the work that you're doing. And so the exploration of trying to figure out what that is, because there are a lot of times I just didn't have the answer,
Mm-hmm.
or I had 100 ideas on things that I wanted to do, but then it's well, what roads do I take to get there,
Right.
and it's like almost starting from scratch again. So
Right.
that part of it has been, while it's been challenging, it's also been motivating, because at the end of the day, I want to succeed in whatever I'm doing, whether it's in my personal life and
Right.
within the work that I'm doing. And so, it drives me, and I finally feel like I'm in a better place. And so for me personally, that's a massive step. But the thing I've learned through it all is failure is good. And
Yeah.
I know that sounds so cliche,
Yeah.
that I needed these things.
Right.
Everything can't go perfectly. And, I want the challenge, and there's something else out there for me.
Right.
It's just the exploration and the journey of like, what's that going to be? I
Right.
enjoy the consulting work I'm doing right now. I love helping other brands here in Nashville and some nationally. And it's really been a great experience for me.
Right.
And I don't know what the future holds five months from now, but
Right.
it's the first time in my life where I'm like, I'm truly going to be, I always say, like, keep swinging, like,
Right.
see what can happen. And that to me is exciting. It's then just, okay,
Yeah.
let's kick it in the
It's just
gear
getting
and
to that
let's make
point.
it happen.
Yeah. It's just kind of getting to that point. I think about the business though, and I think about, and this, we have to talk about this on another pod, but just the culture of just burnout. It's celebrated and it pisses me off to no end. It makes me so mad when, this may be a rant soon, but when things gets, you celebrate people working 100 hours a week, making $30,000 a year with no help. I mean, this is what people in sports do. We celebrate that. And
20,000 when I started.
I know, right? And I'm so over that. I'm just so over that. And I don't know if that ever stops, because there's always going to be some young 22-year-old whippersnapper like myself that'll go anywhere. But, that just drives me batty. Like, there's nobody standing up for people like us. And it just kills, it crushes people, crushes their spirit when they work so much, don't get recognized for it, and then can be let go at a moment's notice, and really with no excuse. And it's just, and I know we're not the only profession that happens in, right? It happens everywhere else. We're not the only people, but it is
Yeah, I
just a
mean,
really hard thing to deal with sometimes.
I crushed myself early in my career. I crushed a lot of other people,
Right.
as far as trying to maintain a standard of the work that we were doing, and trying to compete a lot of times with the big dogs, if we were at the
Right.
smaller university, and even though we didn't have the staffing or the resources. And eventually, it took a long time. It took about a decade, and I finally stepped back and said, I'm trying to do 3 or 4 different jobs here
Yeah.
and at an extremely high level. They obviously don't want me to leave.
Mm-hmm.
I did feel like I was valued in a lot of ways in some of these positions, at least for what I was, the work that I was doing at a high level.
Yeah.
But I realized the more and more I grinded and do it at the high level, the less and less opportunity there was to get more help.
Right. Yeah.
And, I had a story um, at one place where I was wearing a couple of different hats, and it wasn't the intention of why I took the job. And I remember I sat down and the team was in a hiring freeze. And so I assumed an additional role. And not only additional role, I assumed it for over a year, which wasn't, originally what I had signed up for. Sometimes those things happen. But I remember sitting down with a higher up and someone I truly respected and sat down and said, "Hey, look, this is why we need these things. And I don't need to be caught up in the daily weeds of social media doing A, B, and C." And the first thing that was said back to me was like, "Well, it's a lot better now that you've been doing it
Right.
day in and day out."
Right.
And
Yeah.
that was usually a signal, just be like, I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't it wasn't anything about the senior leadership that said that to me, because again, they're working on a more complex level of budget, what can be done,
Right.
what they're able to do. And, sometimes they can't do anything about it either. But, when you hear something like that, it was definitely one of the times mid-career where I was like, what am I doing? This is insanity. I'm going to put myself 6 feet under all for this.
Yeah. For what? That's kind of where I kind of got to the point. It's like, man, this is just not worth it anymore, And I mean, who knows? I could still be down there. I could still be working my job in sports if all the stuff wouldn't have happened, I mean, who knows? But I think everything happened for a reason, and that's a really trite thing to say, but I really do. And, despite all of the other things, I think at the end, it's been a really good thing.
Well, I'm glad to hear from the recovery standpoint that you feel like you're in a good place. So that to me is important, because I know, all of us that have battle scars, and we know what the day in and day out is of going through this entire emotionally draining process. Some people recover quickly, some people take years. And,
Right.
to hear what you're saying is, to me, means a lot more than my own personal situation, because I hate to see people suffer and go through things that I've personally experienced as well. Even if our stories are a little bit different, it's just, this is life, right? Like,
I mean, not everything's
there's just
perfect.
so much. Yep.
And I think that's when you think about that, and it changes your perspective on everything, and I think that's okay, right? I think it's okay, and I mean, I really think that everything in life is a practice, and I think whether that's a physical practice or emotional practice, or people just don't show up and are good at things, I remember this story, Barca. Do you remember when Mike Slive came in and talked to us? Were you there for that?
I'm sure I was.
Anyway, there was a group that we all kind of got together and had lunch, and we would have these speakers to come in, and Mike Slive was commissioner of the SEC at the time, and he came in, and I don't remember a ton about what he said, but I do remember him saying, "Hey, when I make a speech, you can guarantee that I've at least gone over it 10 times in the mirror. And then I've also gone over it twice with my wife. So there's a lot of effort that goes into what I say in public." And it just made me think, you see people just think it's just effortless, right? But it's not. Like, everything is a practice. You have to work at it. And sometimes that's kind of hard to swallow, because some people make it look really easy, right? And it's not. And I think if you kind of have that mindset, I think it just helps a little bit that, I don't really have everything figured out. Are there certain things I can do better than other things? Yes. But, it's because I work at it, I practice at it, and it could be anything. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think in general, I think it's refreshing to have this conversation. It's something that took a long time for me to open up about.
Yeah.
And so, there are a lot of other people in this industry that maybe they've had similar experiences. And I just think overall, like, if it's anything that we can do to help, um, if people can relate to some of the things we're saying and not feel like, you know what, I thought I was the only one that felt this way.
Right.
Um, just overall, in the grand scheme of things, like that's important to me. And I would just say that always willing to do whatever I can to help people,
Yeah.
through their, even if I don't know you and, we want to talk sports over LinkedIn or whatever, and
Right.
ways to jump on a Zoom chat. That's cool with me. I really do care about those things. And
because at the end of the day, Barca, both of our positions, we're really helpers. I mean, we're not helpers like athletic trainers, like life or death, but we're helpers. And we help with sports teams, and we help with kids, and we help with coaches. I mean, that's who we are. We help. And I think if we can help other people, then with these same kind of struggles, then, that's what we're kind of wired to do.
Sports.
Some things have become abundantly clear since we launched this show. First, most people love their time working in sports. They remember it fondly. Second, everybody has a story to tell. We want to tap into those feelings, the battle scars, the behind-the-scenes chaos, the stuff that never made the press release.
we want your stories. Selfishly, we kind of thought we had seen it all in sports, but clearly we have not. So whether it's this might be the death of me moment, or a jaw-dropping behind-the-scenes tale, or even a surprisingly shining one, we want to hear it.
For future episodes, we'll devote a segment to a pre-recorded short story from someone who's been in the biz. Here's the format. Hi, my name is Sam. I worked in sports for 12 years. Now I'm in the boating industry. This sports story will blow your mind.
You can reach out to us on, either DM us on LinkedIn or our Instagram channel, and, let us know that you want to contribute, and we'll coordinate recording a voice memo. The only rule is we don't want any specific names of teams or bosses or even mascots that have their own legal departments. You know the drill.
If you're in recovery from a career in sports, you're not alone. If you've got a story, hit us up. And if you cry while telling it, hey, that's ratings.
I'm up to my ears right now.
It's time for our weekly parting shot, something we like to call Up to Our Ears. Barca, you're up, but be gentle to the young go-getters.
So you want to raise? Great. So does everyone else. But here's the truth. Most of you are asking at the wrong damn time. You took the job 6 months ago. You agreed to the salary, and now you want more. You don't negotiate the price after the deal closes. You think the budget fairy's back there with balloons and a bonus check just because you stayed late during baseball season? Let me tell you how this thing works. You negotiate your contract on the way in. That's your window. That's when you ask. That's when you push. Believe me. Because once you're in, it's quicksand, approvals, chains of command, budget cycles. You're not being ignored. The machine just moves that slow. You want leverage? Bring another offer to the table. Angle for an increased role when it opens up in the organization. Make them sweat when they see your name on a calendar invite. I've been in these meetings. I've begged for an extra $1,000 to keep somebody on staff. And you know what I heard? It's not in the budget. So if you roll in with less than a year under your belt and a speech about what you deserve, save it. Nobody's cutting checks because they feel sorry for you. You want more money? Cool. Then be undeniable. Do the kind of work that makes them afraid to lose you. And then pick the right moment to call your shot. That's the game.
Yeah. Amen to that, brother. Or just leave and take another job for more money, you know?
Exactly.
I mean,
You're exactly right. And the biggest thing to me is always, always, always negotiate your salary when you're about to take a job. Don't take the first number that people that you're given. There's always a way to negotiate.
Time to wrap it up.
and that's another edition of No Longer Credentialed. Thanks to all of you listening, and if you like it, tell a friend and give it a 5-star rating on your podcast app of choice. Next week on the pod, we'll take a shot at some precarious work situations in What Would You Do? We'll also take you behind the curtain when you're hosting a big event. You won't want to miss it. Don't forget to check us out on social media at NLC Pod on X, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week, keep grinding.